we're talking, I'm thinking back on it, how difficult must have it been for them also dating, into my culture and what my culture is. And my culture is very acculturated because I do have very American tendencies, and then I also have very Latino tendencies. So even
Yes.
so even my wife who's from Venezuela, she calls me the American because there are certain things that I'm like, this is how I like them,
Yep.
this is how I do it, and it's a very
Yes.
American way of thinking. But then I also have that other Latino side, so that's why I said acculturation. So I've taken different parts from both cultures and I blended them myself. So she'll be like, "Sí, el americano," and I'll be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, that's me."
Yeah. What makes me think is that one thing is the inner dynamic of the relationship, like you say, Colombian versus Venezuelan, or but there is other in for you also the born here or born in Venezuela, right? But there is also, I think, it makes it a little bit more tougher, or not tougher, but it makes it, because I think the dynamics are changing, but how people perceive you as a couple, and that's where there is a society give you a nod whether yes or no about your relationship, which is different if you see two Latinos where they're two Latinos. I mean, if people are going to say, well, they're supposed to, they're supposed to mingle within the race, but when you step out and you say, well, I'm going to date this someone, I'm going to marry someone, which most of kids are doing right now. And I think going back onto what you said earlier is I could see the people in the 1967 who pioneered the interracial marriage.
Yeah.
And I see us kids from the 70s and 80s as the ones that are kind of closing and kind of bridging that myth of why not marry someone that is from a different race. These millennials, I believe, are going to be the ones that says, you know what, all the stuff you were talking about, BS.
Yeah. I, I
Yeah,
see it.
it
I
doesn't make sense.
I see it from the millennials to Generation Z because I see Generation Z not
Yep.
focusing on certain things, which is very interesting to me. And that's the next crop of, I mean, Generation Z. What are they? They're gonna have the first kid turning 18 soon, or just turned 18, or something like that. So that's a whole new. When we look at it from a growing up perspective, a voting block. So when we look at some things, sometimes we tend to look at them from that aspect of power. So there's going to be a real
Hmm.
shift in how things move and happen from now on in society.
Yeah, and actually, let me share an interesting statistic for particular for Hispanic. They're more likely to intermarry with whites. It's 42%. And so it kind of gives you an idea of, and some people are saying, well, what is the response to that? Who is giving in their identity? And more so for when you look at the notion of marrying up on race.
And you know what? I want to delve into that after this quick break. That segment of the Latinx Point of View podcast was brought to you by L5 Consultants, a company committed to helping bridge cultural differences. You can find them on Twitter at L5 Consultants or on the web at l5online.com.
So coming back to the 42%, Hispanics are more likely to marry whites in interracial marriage. Interesting to me.
It is interesting. And I guess what I'm thinking to myself is there an acculturation period there in between both of them? Or is it more of one or the other wants the other to assimilate to what their culture is? Because I've seen that before. I've seen, and this is just an example I'm going to give out. A white male marry a Latina woman. He dated that Latina woman for 3 to 4 years. So he got to know who she was. He got to know who her culture was. He got to know these things, whether he liked it or not. They get married, and then it's like, I only want you to do these things. So it's like people want you to change. Why? This is how you met me. This is what made you fall in love with me. And now you want me to change more to the things that you do or you say. That kind of acculturation versus assimilation that I say to myself. And then I've seen the other side too. I've seen somebody marry a Latina or something like that, and that guy's out there salsa dancing, and he's with the culture, and he tries to speak Spanish, and he's,
Yeah.
we'll start conversations. He was like, "Hey man, have you been to this Latin restaurant?" And I was like, "I haven't." And he starts telling me about the dishes and stuff like that. I was like, "That's awesome. That's awesome." So I see it back and forth. So it all depends on if the person wants to take that step. And I guess one of the things that we got to ask ourselves if we do fall in love or if we do date outside of our culture or our ethnicity is we need to have that understanding of I'm willing to make these changes and I'm willing to accept someone and their differences also.
Mm-hmm. And their inner cultures in our relationship. It's something like, for example, if my wife, even though from Costa Rica, she loves uh, car racing or horseback riding, and I just like to take photos, and we just don't match in that way. And those are inner cultures, right? But there's some bigger items when we're looking at who goes to the wedding and what kind of wedding you're going to have. Are you going to get married at a Catholic church? And that's a religion, right? And so there's a number of larger items that are heavy over time in a relationship, and they could take a toll. And I don't think that there is more positive or negative. I think they kind of even themselves out because relationship is about giving in and giving up, and not about trying to take in. But at the end, you're trying to just kind of make it work. Though when you are seeing a relationship that it goes through these unfortunate events, it needs to have a very strong hold into what makes them and not necessarily pay attention to the rest of the world because nobody's going to come to rescue you, even though their opinion may feel like they do. But just kind of be conscientious about that.
Religion's a great point when we're talking about differences. And sometimes religion is blended in with ethnicity. Sometimes religion is blended in with culture. I can recall from personal experience having dated a woman who was, I guess, she was Jewish or her mom was Jewish. And it was funny because when we first met, I remember her telling me that she had gone to a Christian church, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So we never, and I guess in my dating life profile, I really never discussed religion and stuff like that. But as you get to know someone more and more, I remember she and we got to talking one day, and we started just talking about future stuff, and it broke down to, well, if you ever had kids, how would you want to raise them?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
I was like, well, for me, a lot of the church things that I will go to for me is more out of tradition than religion. So
Mm-hmm.
if I ever have
Mm-hmm.
kids, I would like my kids to kind of follow in these traditions. And I guess she felt the same way, but from the Jewish perspective. So, she would want her kids to learn Hebrew and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, I found that interesting because I never really found her a religious person. So
Interesting.
it's just when you start having
Interesting.
those conversations, because I don't think she related her Judaism with religion, and she related more with her Judaism with her ethnical background and her culture, because that's the way she was raised.
One of the things that I have as a blended moment is when you're staring. Let's say you come from work, it's a long day of work, and you're married with someone, or you're dating someone, living with someone that is from a different race, different country, whatever it is, and you stare at the refrigerator, and there are about six things that you can actually, just six ingredients, and you just look at each other and just like, what should we make for lunch or for dinner, and what you come up with these unbelievable nobody knows plate that is just between you two. And that's the marriage, literally the marriage of cultures, when that culinary exploitation of ingredients come up, and they're like, well, I could put these, and then I'm like, I can put this, and I'll fry some plantains, and you put some kimchi on there with some rice, and we have a really nice dish. And who's thought that kimchi with rice and plantains was a really good one until you're there? But in Latinos, I believe that there is something that we should be aware that there is not about giving up, and we talked this during our identity podcast. It's not about giving up; it's about really embracing, and really lifting our own identity, our own practices, our own culture in a relationship, and demonstrating the beauty of it. Each culture, I believe, has positives and negatives. And someone very smart told me a long, long time ago, the acculturation process is not about it's not about keeping the negative. It's about actually embracing the positive. And so when you're meeting another culture, don't think about the bad stuff that they may be known for. Think about the positive things they're known for, and take those and make yourself richer.
My relationship now, even though we do share a lot of cultural things, we are very different. As I mentioned before, I have a very American way of wanting to, and maybe my palate is that way. So my wife will sometimes say, "Well, what do you want to have for dinner, or where do you want to go?" I was like, "Let's go get a burger," and she's looking at me like, "I want to have a meal." And she tells me,
Arroz con frijoles.
yeah, and she tells me, I want to have a meal. And I was like, what are you talking about? A hamburger is a meal, you know? Or a sandwich, you know? For me, for lunch, I can be all right with a sandwich. And she's like,
what?
No.
No, that's
she's
for
like,
picnic.
Yeah. And she's like, yo quiero un plátano.
That's for breakfast.
She's like, yo quiero un plátano. Or yo quiero arroz. You know? And I'm like, okay. Yeah, and it's that. So, you know, also working that in also. So she'll give me all right, let's go out for chicken wings sometimes. And then other times we'll be like, okay, babe, let's eat at home, and we'll do the chicken with the rice and the beans and the plantains and all this other stuff.
Rice.
Yeah. But it's all about, and I can embrace both because I love both, but it's like instinctual to me, where it's like, well, what do you want to eat? And I'm already thinking, you know, pizza. I'm already thinking burger. I'm already thinking wings or something like that. And in her head, it's like, well, she calls frijoles caraotas. So she's like caraotas, arroz,
wow,
plátano. You know, so it just goes to where opposites do attract in the food spectrum. Right. Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it. You're picking up the best things. And for in the interracial marriage, I say take advantage of it. That's like a whole journey you're never going to experience otherwise.
As we wrap up this episode, I want to explore what this kind of conversation, and I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but what it will mean for future generations. And when I say what it will mean for future generations, where do you see it going? I know we touched a little bit, but give me a 10-year plan from right now, Gina, as to what you think when we see future generations.
You know, I believe then I'm going to say it. So if somebody want to quote me 10, 15 years from now, we're going to have the most beautiful babies ever. Because interracial marriage just doesn't, some people says wash down the race. I think it makes it more beautiful. This blend of people with different eye colors and different hair textures and skin shades is just going to be gorgeous. And we're going to start losing these very divided mark of black and white. It's going to become very, very, the 50 shades of diversity, the 50 shades of everything we encounter. And I hope by this generation is going to make it happen. I'm kind of done with it. I came back to my roots, and I think I didn't purposely end it there, but I love it. I'm not going to say otherwise. I love it. But I think if you want to go down the road, because it should not be like a conscious decision, it'd be subconscious decision that you just fall in love and just fall in love whoever you want.
Yeah, I'll end it with this. For me, it was those qualities that I was looking for in a woman, and where I met when I met my wife. I said she has these qualities, and I was like, I knew this is the person I'm gonna marry. I told her that before, but I don't think she believed me, and I knew it right away after just a couple of times in talking with her. I said, she has what I'm looking for, and I hadn't found that before. So it just so happens that it brought it back to someone who we share a similar culture. It may not always be the same, and that's okay. And I've said this before. It's okay not to always have the same culture, have the same thoughts, have the same wants. It's good to be different,